All right, so this is Jeff, the Big Hairy Dog, and we are doing a webinar on physical inventory for Prism. Everybody can see the screen, right? So, I mean, I can see the screen, so on my little attached phone, basically. All right, so again, if anybody has questions, please ask them. You can jump in the chat. You can just turn on your mic and ask. That's totally fine, right? So either one is good. All right, so in physical inventory, you're basically talking about four things, four steps, right? You start the inventory, which creates a count sheet, and in the count sheet freezes the quantities, right? We count the stuff, we look at the difference, the discrepancies, and we accept the results. That's it. Step one, start. Step two, count. Step three, discrepancies. Step four is accept those results, right? Which writes transactions adjustment memos, right, to history. So, all right, so step one. Now, I've kind of skipped over something as I go into step one here that we're not going over, and that would be prep. I'm going to tell you that I've been in retail, and physical inventory is 85% prep. If you're all prepped and perfect, this part of it, the actual day of counting, should go pretty smooth. Anyway, if we go to our little start button, if we can get our start button to go. Okay, that's good. Okay, excellent. Not sure what's going on here. Okay, let's okay. Okay, it seems like we had a little Teams window open on I'm actually operating this remotely, so had a little Teams window that was interfering with the buttons, and I now figured that out. I apologize. All right, so we drop into Prism. It loads the main menu. We then go to store operations. So we click on our button down here. We go to store operations. We then go to merchandise, and here is physical inventory. So we click on physical inventory. Now we're going to click new here, and we're going to give it a name and then create it here in a second. But I want to back up and make sure that we're all kind of on the same page with an important setting. So let's go into admin console, node selection. Typically, node selection is best dealt with in the company above the stores, merchandise, PI sheet. And okay, so here we got to decide whether we're using simple or zones. I'm a big fan of zones. I'm still working on some doc designs, but I have some preliminary ones that we'll be playing around with. I'm going to have Retail Pro make some modifications to them, I think. But overall, I'm a big fan of zones. I've had a lot of clients using Simple recently, and Simple works splendidly. A zone is an area that you want to isolate, upload data, and then decide whether it was counted correctly or not. So with zones, you have the ability to have sort of two steps. You have the ability to check the zone and accept it, and as well as check your discrepancies later on, right? With simple physical, um, you have a temporary moment where you can do that, and then it merges into the count. And once it merges into the count, it's like pouring a bucket of water into a pool, right? You're not getting it back. Once it mixes in, it's mixed in, if that makes sense. So, you know, we can do both if you want. I don't have a problem with that. You guys, do you guys have a preference? Do you guys do it simples, or do you guys use zones all the time? And if you can't answer, I get it because it's a webinar. So I'm gonna leave it on zones for now, and we'll come back and maybe explore the simple thing if that's something we want to do, right? So click save, back into store operations, merchandise, physical inventory. We click new, comes up and asks us for a name. So we could give this a name, whatever we want to give it. We got to give it a name. Then we can create it, which is creating it for everything, right? Or I can create it with a filter, which would mean I'm doing a small section of my inventory. Something's filterable, like you know, apparel, men's tops, something, right? Like I could filter to a department code, or I could filter to a vendor code, or a combination thereof, right? But that's typically what we would call a cycle inventory, where you've divided your inventory up into many different pieces, and you're taking a little tiny inventory every week over the course of, say, 3/4 of the year, and then probably you cease during the fourth quarter is usually the pattern. But we're just going to click create. Now, create means that we're not filtering, therefore everything is going into the count sheet. Okay, so you can see I've been playing around a little bit. um, so if we click on the one that says active yes, it's got my name on it, right? Uh, and then at the bottom, we would click into the PI sheet. So we could go drop inside the PI sheet, and we would see, you know, everything, right? So, you know, when you start a physical inventory sheet, right, it copies the on hand into the start quantity. And of course, we haven't put any counts in there yet, so we're pretty much short everything, right? That's how physical works. So that's step one right there. Step one done. You click new and give it a name and click OK. That's it. All right. So step two, when you're using zones, would be to go into zones and start counting, right? Um, if you're in simple mode, you could just start counting right here, because you're just going to dump things in here and they're just going to mix together, right? So we have zones turned on, so I'm going to click down in here into zones, and we don't have any zones yet, so it's blank. And I'm going to click new and create a zone. We can call this whatever you want. So you got, you know, a fair number of characters here, right? 20 characters is pretty decent to name a zone. Now, if you're doing multiple stores at the same time, I'm going to say that, you know, maybe you put in store number, right? One. And like you can see what I've got here. I've got like backroom 101, backroom 100, sales floor. You can put in whatever you want. I got 20 characters, so it can be pretty liberal. But you want to have a good naming convention that everybody gets. You know, so when you look at this thing, you know right where that thing is, right? You don't want to be struggling to find it. And really, when I was in retail, which was maybe somewhat a long time ago now, but I was an ops manager, and I was in a 22,000 square foot store, and we drew a map, and we had zones, and we had them all laid out, and everybody knew where all the zones were, right? We had section tags everywhere. So organization and preparation are key to having a decent physical. Anyway, I'm going to click create. Zone is created. Great, right? So I could click on the zone. I could go inside the zone sheet. Inside the zone sheet, I could come over here to imported. Of course, there's nothing imported yet. So now in the zone sheet, now we could import items with a scanner. We could import items from a spreadsheet. We could key in items. I could just go here to add counts and start keying in items. Not the most efficient way to probably to put them in. Most people use a scanner. I don't have a scanner. I'm just gonna upload from like a file which actually works pretty well. If you there are some scanners out there that older scanners, and some, like, there's an app on certainly the iOS platform. I think it's called Scanner, actually, that I have on my iPhone, that allows you to basically scan, things with the camera, and it scans better than I would expect, actually, um, and email these files over to you, and then you could format them as CSV, which just the skew and the count, and import them. So, that's something to consider if you want more scanners per se. Or of course, you could also get like the Foundry Logic scanners, which are exceptional. They're really outstanding. They upload wirelessly, and they let you name the zone on the scanner, and they're pretty slick, I'm going to say. So anyway, for now, to mimic what a zone looks like when we upload it, I'm going to come down here to import. I am going to specify that I have an import file. Now you could say new here, and you could then click continue. Got to give it a name. Continue. Then you get to decide, what order things are in, and whether it's fixed length or delimited. I'm going to go delimited. I'm going to put the item number, or ALU, in the first column and the count in the second column, and I'm going to do ALUs. I am in fact going to cancel this though, because I already have one of those. So we're going to try this again, imported, and we're going to just select import. And there you can see it's already built. I can bring in UPCs or ALUs. Can click continue, choose a file. So I've got some files I've already prepared, because this is a webinar and got to kind of be prepared for these things. But I'm just going to right click and open one of these up. So we can just look at it. It's not terribly exciting. Got a ALU, comma, and you got a account, right? That's what we got. Now, since it's delimited, there's no fixed length here, right? It could be a UPC, it could be 12 characters, 13 characters and a comma, or it could be 6, it wouldn't matter, right? So we're going to select that file, open, and we are going to click import and see what happens. And the item's imported, right? So there's those counts, 2, 3, 56. I don't know what I did there, but there you go, right? Now, in a simple mode, the exact same thing happens, right? Now, to get these from your imported tab over to your scanned tab, right, you have to merge them, right? Right, so now they're in scanned tab in the zone, right? And I toyed around with earlier, and I think I need to get Retail Pro's assistant. Basically, inside these templates, these doc designs, now you can write C++, and I'm not a C++ expert, so I'm going to say that I'm going to get them to give me a hand on some of that, right? Right, so I created this earlier, just messing around, and let's just start with preview. Come on. It only goes like really slow like that when I'm recording. All right, so anyway, I chopped this down and made it like fit on the page where we could see what we're looking at. Now the problem right now is this is showing all items, right? This is just showing, I don't have much in my inventory, but everybody else in the world has quite a bit more in their inventory, right? So the assistant piece I'm going to get from Retail Pro is to write a C++ statement that says basically that this column here, the scan quantity has to be greater than 0, right? So it's just otherwise it shouldn't show the record. The record should be omitted. Anyway, generally speaking, when you scan a zone, you print out that zone. You then can have somebody go and randomly double check some of these items, right? So the question is, can we afford, with today's payroll and the way the culture is in retail to double check 100% every item that we count. I'm guessing no, by the way. We should double check though. We should go back and do some sampling to see if there are errors being created. If there are, then we should go deeper and we should fix them, right? If you don't sample the data, you're not going to know if somebody's scanning. There are people that just can't scan. There are people that they're much better used to retag the merchandise that didn't have tags that got kicked out into a trouble table, right? So, it definitely, when you have a zone, the point of having a zone is to be able to preview this zone before you accept the zone into the master account. That's the reason you do zones. If you're not going to do that, then don't bother using zones, right? Now, right now, we can go like this. We can say, give me an export format, right? And you could then say, export this right now. Now, there's a default design that's just like mine, except it's really spread out like pretty wide. And so if you were to, let's just see, can we open this? Let's open it in Notepad. No. All right. Well, I guess it's too late now. So we made that association, right? We can open. That is not what we're looking for. Okay, let's try print and pick a design. And let's pick XLS. Let's see if it goes to that, right? Okay, I don't know that I have XLS on there, actually. And yeah, CSVable PDF. Let's see what goes on there, right? Export. All right, so let's try this then. Let's there it is right there, right? There's the PDF. And is it loading? Not so well. It might be that it said it was a 0 byte file. I'm not really sure. I don't know why my design is not working. Let's just go back to the let's go back to the one that Retail Pro put in there just to export, and let's pick CSV and let's try to export that since I'm failing miserably and it's being recorded. I have exported these things pretty successfully in the past. I'm not sure why we're having such a problem right now. Okay, open file. Oh yeah, that's exactly it. I don't know why it took this much. Now, so in here, since this is comma delimited, you could now open this up in Excel, right? Excel understands what a comma delimited file is. And then you could sort it and play with it. And, now I pulled some things out. This has the zone name here. You see at the end of each row. And it's got the start quantity and then the scan quantity and the discrepancy. Which I usually like to go, yeah, that's right. So there's your start quantity, there's your scan quantity, and there's your discrepancy, right? But those would all columnize if you open this in Excel, and then you could play around with it and look at it and drop the ones that weren't in that zone and pretty easily get down to what you want to get to if you're, and honestly, when you're double checking zones, if you've got a zone that's got leather jackets in it, you're probably gonna check more of those than you would if it had tubes of chapstick, right? I mean, we all prioritize how we double check, and you got to have a little bit of common sense there, right? All right, so let's close this one. Let's, in reality, you'd make many zones. We're gonna make just two probably. So I'm gonna say another new zone. I'm gonna give this another name. I'm just gonna say it's 101. It's still in the back room, still in store one. Create. I am gonna hop into this zone here. Go into the zone sheet. Go to the imported and click import. And I am going to select our map and So this time, what I'm going to do is bring in a bad scan. So we're going to choose the next file, zone 2 here, which I deliberately put a bad scan in. So we're going to click import. We should see a little yellow box pop up in the bottom right corner. As soon as it gets around to importing our items here, there it is, the little bad scan thing. However, it contains bad scans, right? I mean, we imported the items, however, there are some bad scans. So on the bad scan sheet, again, I played with a design this morning, just trying to get it to work. This is my attempt to write some C++, so we're going to skip that one because that one does not work. And I was able to get it down pretty close, except that I've got to eliminate all those other items, right? So I'm going to have them write the C++ and get it to, and this is not the final version, but I was able to get, like here you can see that's my fake item number, right? So you can see this is the record, this record right here, and I think that's the record. This is the record right here. The bad scan is the one I want. I just want to see the quantity and I want to see the SKU I scanned. That's really all you got, right? I mean, if it's a bad scan, it doesn't match anything in your database. Therefore, you got no description, you got no start quantity, you got no discrepancy, right? So, but it's nice to be able, if you got 2 or 3 of these, to be able to print them out, right? And take them in your hand back to that section and find them, right? That's all I'm looking for, really. I mean, with one, you could just write it down, right? You wouldn't even need to print it out. But in reality, sometimes you'll get more than one. So here's our bad scan. If we go over there and we now know what that bad scan is, right, then we are going to click the item lookup, which we're going to do in a minute, probably, and select an item. If the item, when you go over to it, we don't know what it is. We're going to have to stop. We're going to have to research this. Then, of course, that's what a trouble table is for, right? When I was in physical, we always had a trouble rack and a trouble table, one for hanging, one for hard goods. And if an item didn't have a barcode and was not easily and quickly identifiable, it just got moved to the trouble area. And then I had a person over there tagging that stuff and cleaning it up. So, and of course, we scan the trouble area last. That's what a trouble area is, right? So, so in that case, you would just clear this. You clear selected or clear all, and just wipe it out, drop it out of the zone completely, get rid of it. But in this case, I think we're going to go ahead and try and do a lookup. So I'm going to click item lookup. It's going to take me out to inventory. I could do a real search. This isn't a webinar about searching, but certainly I could have used description one or vendor code or department code or any of the above, right? And I could have isolated the item however I needed to. Then I can like pick an item here, and I just double clicked it, and it just accepted that as the SKU, replaced it, removed it from the bad scan list, moved it into the scanned counts, I'm guessing. Let's see here. Yeah, no, so here's the imported one. I haven't merged them yet. So now that I have none, I can merge that over into the scanned area. And I could then print this out and double check it and go play with it, right? Now, as these are getting double checked and they're coming back up to me, you could, and I probably would, merge these, right? So there's the ability to merge these down here, right? So in merging these, you're going to feed the master total count, right? So I could have some items on the sales floor. I could have more of them in the stock room. So the sales floor is zone 50 and the stock room is zone 101. I got 12 on the floor. I got another 50 in the back. When I merge them, I get a total count of 62 in the master count. Does that make sense? So a zone is a way of just putting on little horse blinders and looking at one little section and validating that section before we choose to accept it. Of course, the other option is you could actually choose to delete it, right? I could just mark this and hit the delete button down here and say, look, that one was trash. We fixed a few items, but then we found 10 more errors. And at this point, I don't feel confident. Let's just delete it and rescan it, right? That's what a zone is. So we start, we count, and if we use zones, we can manage those zones. If we're not using zones, we're uploading right into the count, right? And it's just all going in. Once you upload and merge that into the scan, it's in the master count. There is no secondary merge like I'm doing now. Now I'm just going to go ahead and say mark all and merge marked, and that just merged both zones, and now they're checked off over here in the merge column. I like to merge them one by one if I'm having people double check them, because then they get checked off and I know which ones have been double checked, right? I got my own little count sheet running the screen. All right, so we close that. Now, in the big picture here, say new, don't care about that, don't save. So in the big picture, there's 4 steps, right? So there's step 1 is to start. We did that, right? Step 2 is to count. And we pretty much did that. We got 2 zones, right? Step 3 is our discrepancies. And step 4 is going to be to update, right? Now, what I wanted to talk about real quick is where we are in this process, okay? So we have accomplished essentially the first 2 steps, right? That's where we are. And that's a very important point in the strategy of taking physical inventory, okay? So let's talk about how this thing works. So we're going to have, we're going to have an item and it's going to have a start quantity, right? And then it's going to have a count and it's going to have a discrepancy or difference. I'm just going to go with diff. It's a lot shorter and easier to type. And of course, the on hand is still the on hand. So let's say hypothetically that we're about to start and we have 10 on hand. Okay, so we hit the start button. And when we hit the start button, it's going to look like this. It's going to have a 10 here. It's going to have a 0 here. It's going to have a minus 10 here, right? And it's still going to have a 10 here in inventory, right? And so if I go out and count 8 of these, it's now going to look like this, right? Okay. Now, when I hit the update button, when I accept these, when I get down to step 4, right? What's going to happen is this. The let's see, the new quantity, the post inventory quantity, or whatever you want to call it, right, is going to be equal to the current on hand plus the diff. Okay, does that work? Okay, so let's see. The current on hand is 10. If I add 10 to -2, hey, I get 8. That works, right? Now, the reason that this is an important point here in the process mentally is because after I freeze the book value and after I freeze the physical value, I can start selling stuff, right? So what happens if I sell down here? What happens if I sell 5 of those? Okay, well, this looks like this then. I got an 8 there still. I got a -2 there. And I got a 5 right here, right? Does this still work? If I had 8 and I sold 5, I'd have 3. If I take the current on hand of 5 and add a -2, I get 3. It works, right? So because we're not taking the actual count, we're taking the discrepancy and applying it to whatever is out there when we hit that update button. It understands that you've taken some stuff out of inventory. The on hand has changed, right? It gets it when you make a sale. Now, the only issue you have here is being open while you're counting, right? So let's say that we sold one before we counted our 8. Okay, this is going to blow up on us, right? So when we go out to count them, we can't count 8 because there's only 7 there. So we get a discrepancy of 3, right? And the on hand right now is 9. We sold one. Does the math still work on that one? No, it doesn't. Because if you take 9 and apply a -3, you're going to get 6. So what's happening here is the invoice, the receipt, is taking it out of inventory, and so is the physical inventory. You're double dipping. So when you hit the start button, you have to count everything in the building at that moment, which just means you got to have a good strategy, right? You got to come in early and nail down most of the floor to where you can manage that last aisle while you finish scanning if somebody's shopping it, right? Or you got to go the other way. You know, if you can't start the physical till your inventory stops moving. But especially if you got those Foundry Logic scanners, you could load those things up, man, in the stock room. So if I was going to close at 6 p.m., I'd start scanning the stock room at like 2, right? And I'd get all the zones loaded up. I wouldn't upload them, like I wouldn't send them in yet, right? As soon as I hit the start button, though, as soon as I lock that door at 6 p.m. and hit that start button and create that count sheet, then I'd be uploading those things like gangbusters, right? Then I'd hit the floor hard. So it's all about strategy. It's all about timing and managing when customers can shop, right? But this is the point where once you've captured both those, you're now fair game to go ahead and make sales. So if it's 2 in the morning and you're about to go into discrepancies, you're going to get diminishing returns. I mean, you're really not going to be effective at 2 or 3 in the morning looking at your discrepancies. Go home, let them open tomorrow and do your discrepancies. The next day is still a great opportunity. If you only got a half a day sales in, it's going to be fine. You're not going to have a problem figuring out discrepancies. A week down the road, yeah, it starts to get a little weird. But all right, so here's our zones underneath us, right? Here's our PI sheet. Here's our discrepancies, right? So everything in this view is in discrepancy. Whether it's over or short, it's in discrepancy, right? So these, again, I would want to print these out. And I have I think I have is it this one? Let's see here. Oh, it's this one right here. I think let's just toy with this one here. And we can export this, right? So preview for now. Right, so I squeezed this down using that export design of that discrepancy design. I added a bunch of columns. The discrepancy design is pretty weak from the Retail Pro directly. It has UPC in it. Most of us don't. I have like very few clients that are 100% UPC. Everybody's 100% ALU because we get to assign this. So it's going to be a guaranteed 100%. But it had UPC description 1 and the quantities. So I added the ALU and description 2 and attribute size, and I squeezed everything over so we can see it on one page. Then normally we would print this out and we would go verify the ones that we felt uncomfortable with, right? So again, this is phase 2 in double checking. If you're using zones, you have the opportunity to double check each zone. If hypothetically, if every zone was counted perfect, then this count stands, right? There's no mistakes in here, but there's always mistakes in there, right? We're human beings. So we print this out. We go through this, kind of work through it, and verify the ones we feel that are inappropriate, and then we go make corrections to those, right? So if we were going to make corrections to them, let's say we were going to take, I don't know, item 4 here. If we overcounted item 4 and we undercounted item 3, hypothetically, right? I could now cancel that, go back into zones. I mean, at least I find this to be probably the most efficient way to do it. Click new and make a correction zone. And you can have as many of these as you want, right? If you got 5 people doing corrections and they give you 5 different lists, I would put one in for each person, right? I wouldn't try and do the math myself in my head, that's for sure. So if I create a new zone like that, then I could go into the zone sheet and I could say I want to add counts. And I could say, okay, I want to take item 4 and I want to take back 84 of those or 87, whatever, right? Today I can't count. And then I want to take item 3 and give those 87 to item 3. Right, see, so I like this because I don't have to go find the item in the inventory list, right? I can just type in the quantities I want to affect it by, and this one did not get correctly done, did it? It should be able to subtract quantities in here, but it's not working for me. All right, I guess I'm going to be following up with Resell Pro on that one too, because that was working until recently. All right, so let's click close. So let's go back to the discrepancy screen. So what I can do over there. Actions, merge, close. Discrepancies. I don't think I can do that from here. So, um, PI sheet. Well, I mean, at this point, then for sure, what we can do is we can go into our zones. Oh, cancel zones. Actions. I can unmerge these, but I'll be getting with Retail Pro to find out if because we've been able to count negative quantities in the past. But I can absolutely unmerge this, and then I can go back inside here, right, the zone sheet. And in here, once it's unmerged, you can edit anything you want, right? But now we're talking about finding the item, right? Fortunately, it's right there. But if I wanted to modify this count, right, in some way, I should be able to modify this count now, right? I can change that to 0. I can change it to whatever I want. Nice. So who knew it was so close, right? I didn't even know that. All right, close, actions. All right, we gotta highlight it, merge. So basically, step 3 would be that we work through our discrepancies, make changes either in the zones, or if I can find a better way to do that, I think I should be able to just upload those changes, and I'll have to find out if I can do that. All right, so then um, so step 4, right? Step 4, if you've counted all your stuff and you've worked through your discrepancies and you feel like your the count's as good as it's going to get, right? Then you're going to go and say do it update, and you're going to want to make sure you pick the right reason code. Now in the update screen, it pretty much would always be all counts. So if you do a filtered physical inventory for just men's tops or something, and you have a starter quantity 2 and you don't count any, it's because you don't have any. So it needs to go to 0. You see, that's why we do all counts. Because that way, if there's no count in it, it's going to get wiped out, right? If you only do quantities only, then an item that started with the quantity 2 and had no count it would remain at quantity 2 in the inventory and therefore not go to 0, and you would pass that shrinkage on to your next physical inventory, right? Which would be bad. So I'm going to say yes, definitely. Always leave it on. It should default to all counts. You don't have to do anything there. Just leave it on there, right? Pick the right reason code, make a comment if you want. Click update. Boom, right? That's it. It's so easy to update in this version. It's so much easier than it was in previous versions. Um, Now, when it updates, of course, it has to live by the same rules we do, right? It can't go changing quantities without leaving an audit trail, right? So where is that audit trail? Let's go back to store operations. Let's go to merchandise and adjustment memo lookup. It makes adjustment memos. Probably didn't make more than one though. Yeah, see on the top there, physical inventory is the source. That's the most important thing, and it's also the reason that we picked, right? So, so there is a physical inventory. Uh, there's an adjustment memo there, and this adjustment memo, and there's a limit to how many items. Now, this is a sandbox. I don't have that many items, right? So, uh, I don't have more than like 50 or 60 items probably. But I think the limit has historically been 900 SKUs can go on an adjustment memo. So if you had 3,000 items being adjusted out of 50,000 or something, right? It would need 4 transactions to get 3,000 items all recorded, if that makes sense. because you'd go 900, you'd spill over, you'd go 900, you'd spill over, you'd go 900, you'd spill over, and then there would be the remaining 300 on the last memo, right? Anyway, so this thing here gives you the value of at the bottom here. We can scroll down a little bit. Apparently we're having some scrolling issues. Nice, but you can see the adjusted cost here, and there's a difference of cost beneath that. And same with price and quantity. Now, I was toying around with a report, right? So again, I'm in a sandbox. Normally you'd click run with a filter. I'm just going to click run it wide open. And I think I have a previous physical in there. So this is showing all items, right? And that got adjusted, and I could actually just type physical in here, right? And that would limit it to only items that were in that physical inventory, right? For the time period I specified. I didn't specify a time period, but again, this is a sandbox, and that's the luxury I have, right? So what this is it's all those items that are on that adjustment memo, or in reality, it's on all the adjustment memos. So if there was 4 of them, they would now be mixed together, and I could now take a look at the results, and I could say, you know, what is, you know, the item with the highest loss of cost dollars here, right? So I could sort these and play around with them, and then I could go investigate theories and I mean, you have to look at the results of your physical, right? You really do. So, but that's what this kind of report could do, and this is something I've created that I put up on our network that we could install if you have Crunch, and it wouldn't be too hard to install. All right, so I guess, is there any questions about the overall process of doing physical inventory? Does anybody want me to switch it to simple mode without zones and go in and toy around with that? Or does anybody have any specific questions about any of these processes? What's that?
By vendor? Can we do by vendor, right?
Oh yeah, you mean, can you do a physical by vendor?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be a cycle, right? So if we go back in here and we go back to like, so all right, so if I go to merchandise physical inventory, I only have like 2 vendors in here, but you know, that's all we need, right? So I'm going to click new, and I'm going to say whatever, we'll say PI 2023 Nike, and then I'm going to say create with filter, and I'm going to select, you know, the vendor code field, vendor code, and then I'm going to select Nike, right? And click OK. So now this count sheet, very good question, by the way. And so what's important to understand about this one here is, if we go into the PI sheet and look at the items, everything is from Nike, right? Everything's from the vendor I chose, right? So if I upload an item that is not from that vendor, it will be a scan error. It will not be able to count anything that's not Nike. Does that make sense? Because when you're doing a vendor, you know, that vendor, like this stuff, Nike, they sell what, shoes, they sell shorts, shirts, they sell all kinds of products, right? So that vendor is going to be all over the place. It's going to be really important that you have a good map, that you've walked the floor and figured out where all these items are. And you know they're going to hit some items that aren't Nike, right? I mean, it's going to happen. You're going to get a bunch of scanners. So most of the scanners you get from this kind of an inventory, though, you could just discard. You could just clear them because they're not Nike products, right? But otherwise, the process is the same. Now, with a cycle inventory, like doing vendors or doing departments or doing, we could have done both. I could have added department to that, right? We could have done Nike with men's tops or something, right? But you want to run a report, like an on-hand report, the week before you're going to do that count, and you want to walk that on-hand report and identify that filter criteria and find out where all that stuff is, then build your map off that, and then be ready, have your section tags laid, and then be ready to count that thing the morning of the cycle count. But yeah, you can filter it any way you want. It's the ultimate answer, right? I mean, if we go back up, I'll ever close this and say take that one there and just deactivate that and say make another new one, and say create with filter. See, I could do vendor code. I could have, department code in there. I could have description 1 and 2 in there. So I could go and say, things that are from Nike that contain the word. Oh, I can't. I got to say equals here. Interesting. Just this description. That's department code. Yeah, forget that. Down here, I could say contains, T, whatever I want to do here, right? Men's tees. All right. Men's tops, tees. Things containing the word T. I don't even know if I'm going to get anything, right? So let's click OK. And let's go inside it and see what I got, right?
Yeah, we can minimize it as much as we can.
What's that?
We can minimize it as much as we can. We need.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, here I got down to two items, right? I mean, that's a little ridiculous for a physical, but yes, you can, I mean, when you're doing a cycle inventory, you want to sit down and plan all the different filter criterias out. Like if you're doing a cycle, you want to say this week we're doing this area, the next week we're doing this area, and the next week we're doing that area. And you want to have all that mapped out, right? You want to have that planned out way in advance, because otherwise you'll bite off more than you can chew one week, right? That's what'll happen if you don't get it planned out well.
Correct. So I just got my Zebra mobile. So this Zebra mobile, I can also use it like, let's say, for the front, like if the customer asks me about kind of shoes, so can I use it and check what sizes we have in the back for the inventory, the Zebra mobile?
That's a good question. I have never tried to use it that way. So the Zebra scanner uses Foundry Logic software, and Foundry Logic, it does have the inventory in there. I've never tried to use it that way though. So I'd have to play with it. I couldn't answer that question without playing with it from myself. And I'm not. I have one at my desk, but I'm not physically at the office today, so I'm not at my desk. I would have to get back to you on that. I can't say for sure.
Yeah, I just got it. So maybe
Well, I mean, there's a lot of uses for that. I mean, one use is physical inventory, but you could certainly also, like if you had wanted to take it out and scan everything that's like, if you were receiving shoes and the shoes have the UPC codes up when you open the box, so you could just take that out and scan everything that's coming in and then upload that right wirelessly back into your voucher, right?
oh wow.
You could also take that thing out to the sales floor. If you had tags that had barcodes, you could scan the barcodes on the tags to scan items that you want to order and upload that to a PO. I mean, you can upload to any document. And then, when you hit new on that Zebra scanner, it says receiving, PI, transfer. Any area can upload to any document. So those are just labels. That's all they are, right? So if you say receiving, but you're scanning items you want to order, then you sync it back wirelessly. Then you'll go over to your PO, you open it up, say I want to import the items, and boom, you see that one that says receiving, but it wasn't going to be receiving. There is no PO label in the device, but yeah, you just upload it to a PO and it uploads fine. So,
Play with it. I don't know. New for me. I never use it.
yeah, I'm trying to think, and I really, all I've done with that is I've pretty much scanned items, uploaded the zones. Is pretty much all I've done. There's two different modules. There's no, there's actually only one module for that. There are two different applications from Foundry Logic, but the Zebra doesn't have any of the point of sale equipment. It doesn't have a scanner. It doesn't have, it can't read cards. It does have a scanner for scanning items, but it doesn't have a card reader. So you couldn't really process the sales on it per se, right?
I just use inventory just for checking the inventory.
Right.
like instead
Uh,
of going to the back room, I can use it. I check like it's a size 10 of the shoes, you know, size 10.
yeah,
Instead of
I think you
go back.
can, but I'm not going to say 100% you can because I'd have to get the item and play with it for a minute before I can answer that question. But I know that I know that you have a schedule that Foundry Logic mobile suite software that's on the computer. It synchronizes with the Oracle database into its SQL database pretty much every day, and that then gets uploaded or to the device, right? So on the device, you've got a cloud that goes up with an up arrow, and you got a cloud that goes down. So you want to in the morning, if you want a fresh inventory, you have to download it from this from the so you have to download first thing in the morning all your quantities and have a current inventory list, right? Because if you added a new item and you didn't download the list, then that new item wouldn't be in the scanner. Now it is a smart scanner, but you got to keep it fresh. You got to keep the data fresh, right? But um, but all that can be scheduled, I believe, and then you can manually just hit the cloud. It only takes a few minutes, and then you're good probably for the day. So, um, excellent question, by the way. I wish I could have given you a better answer. Anything else? Any other questions? All right, then. Well, I guess I'm going to say thank you for joining our webinar, and have a good rest of your day. Of course, this is a recorded thing, so it will be posted up. You guys will get emails and links and all that stuff to be able to revisit this exciting episode, right?
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I'll see you guys later. All right. Bye-bye.